The morning sun rolled over the vast Montana plains like a slow-rising torch, casting gold across. Sagebrush Valley as rancher Eli McKenna stood by the weather-worn post of his wooden gate, boots planted, heart pounding harder than it should have for a man built like a hammer and tempered like steel. He had lived 35 years without needing anyone. But after too many winters alone, too many nights talking only to cattle and coyotes, he finally sent a letter through a marriage agency in Kansas, hoping for a bride, a gentlewoman named Sarah Mayfield, who wrote in delicate handwriting about her dreams of homesteads, warm kitchens, laughter echoing across the open land. Eli pictured her petite, soft-spoken, maybe clutching a small suitcase as she stepped off the mail coach and into his life. But as he waited that morning, dust rising on the horizon, the coach wheels creaking into view, he felt something shift in the wind, something heavy, bold, unfamiliar. And when the coach stopped and the driver looked down with eyes wide as prairie moons, Eli knew instantly that whatever was inside was not the woman he had written to. Instead, the coach door swung open, and out stepped a shadow first, a massive silhouette that swallowed the sunlight, before a towering figure ducked. Beneath the frame, shoulders broader than a bull's chest, arms thick with muscle, skin bronzed and scarred by battle and mountains and storms, an Apache warrior whose presence alone made the horses pull back nervously, and Eli's heart stuttered as the man stood tall, nearly twice his height, long black hair braided with bone beads, dark eyes sharp like obsidian knives, a silent storm in human form. For a moment, the entire valley held its breath, the wind stopping, the birds quieting, the world itself bracing as this giant of a man stepped onto the dirt road and looked Eli straight in the soul before saying in a deep, resonant voice that carried like thunder across the plains, "You are Eli McKenna. You sent for a bride." Eli blinked, stiffened, forced himself not to reach for the rifle leaning against his fence, and managed to say, "I did." "She ain't you," to which the Apache only stepped closer, the earth almost groaning beneath his weight, and replied, "The woman you waited for, she is gone. And by the law of my people, I come in her place," leaving Eli speechless, torn between confusion, fear, and a strange spark of curiosity that flickered against his better judgment. The driver quickly threw down a burlap sack, muttering that he wanted no trouble, then cracked the reins and took off down the trail, leaving Eli alone with this enormous stranger who smelled of pine, smoke, and distant mountains. The Apache introduced himself as Dakota, a name meaning friend to all, though Eli wasn't sure if that was a warning, a reassurance, or a test, and as Dakota explained, that Sarah Mayfield was taken in by his tribe after a raid left her wagon, destroyed safe, but unwilling to marry a man she'd never met. The giant warrior added that she had a brother among the Apache who refused to let her leave alone. So Dakota took her place and came to honor the agreement, though Eli had no idea how such honoring worked, between two grown men who had never exchanged a single word. But Dakota stood unwavering, insisting that he was bound by his tribe's promise to protect Sarah's future, and if Eli needed help, labor, defense, or companionship until Sarah could come in spring, then Dakota would stay, train, work, and guard the ranch with his life. The idea was absurd, dangerous, maybe even a little insane, and Eli opened his mouth to refuse. But then a cold gust swept across the plains, carrying the scent of snow too early for the season, and he remembered the rustlers he'd seen last week in the foothills, the tracks too many for one man to face alone, and the wolves drawn by the early cold, and suddenly the idea wasn't insanity, it was opportunity. Costly maybe, but useful. Still, Eli wasn't the type to trust easily, especially not a warrior built like a living mountain. Yet something in Dakota's eyes held no threat, only purpose, duty, and an unwavering steadiness. So Eli turned, gestured toward the ranch house, and said, "If you're staying, you work. Hard. No trouble. No games. You pull your weight." And Dakota nodded with solemn acceptance, stepping beside him with quiet, powerful strides that made Eli feel oddly smaller than he'd ever felt. As they walked through the gate, the ranch dogs barked nervously until Dakota knelt, extended a hand, and let them sniff him. Seconds later, they bowed their heads and followed him like he carried their ancestors' spirits. leaving Eli muttering, "Well, ain't that something," under his breath. Inside the barn, Dakota inspected the tools, the horses, the land stretching beyond the fences, and spoke in a low tone about storms coming, drought pockets near the northern ridge, and tracks of trespassers near the creek. The kind of details a man noticed, only after years surviving in harsh lands, and Eli began to realize this wasn't just a giant warrior. This was a protector forged by wilderness, a man who saw threats and truths in every shadow. Still, Eli didn't relax. He couldn't, because no matter how helpful Dakota seemed, the fact remained, he came instead of the bride Eli had waited months for, dreamed about, prayed for, and the disappointment felt like a stone lodged in his chest. Night settled over the valley with a cold bite, and the ranch house glowed warm as Eli cooked beans and cornbread, his hands rough but skilled from years alone, while Dakota sat by the fire, silent, observant, respectful of the space. When Eli finally asked, "Why you really here?" Dakota stared into the flames and said quietly, "Because Sarah Mayfield fears men she does not know. And you fear a life with no one beside you. My people say 2 fears can guard each. Other until courage grows." Words so unexpected. Eli nearly dropped the iron pot. He didn't believe in destiny or signs, but something in Dakota's tone, deep, honest, stripped of ego, stirred a part of him he thought long dead. Outside, coyotes yelped and the wind howled as if testing the ranch. But Dakota stood, stepped onto the porch, and stared into the darkness like he could command it to behave. And for the first time in years, Eli felt something like safety settle over his land. Not from a bride's gentle presence, but from a warrior's unshakable watch. Still, sleep didn't come easy. Eli lay awake, wondering what tomorrow would bring, how neighbors would react, whether rustlers would test the ranch, and whether this giant, Apache, would stay true to his word. But one thing he knew for certain. The moment that coach door opened, his life veered into a story no man would believe, and the days ahead would either break him or rebuild him into someone stronger, someone braver, someone ready for whatever fate had tossed his way. And as he drifted into restless sleep, Dakota remained outside, a sentinel against the night, marking the beginning of a bond neither of them could yet understand, a bond forged by fate, fire, and the strange twist of destiny that brought a warrior instead of a bride. And for anyone hearing this tale now, for anyone drawn to stories of courage, unexpected alliances, and the raw power of the Old West, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss what happens next. Because the storm rolling toward Sagebrush Valley is just beginning, and Chapter 2 will shake their world in ways no one can predict.